So is it time in 2024 to say goodbye to Canon in favour of Lumix? Which is best for video, the Canon R6 Mark II or the Lumix S5 Mark II? In this video, I'm going to be putting up against each other and decide, is it time to sell my Canons after 30 years of owning them? Hey everyone, hope you're all tickety-boo. Now then, for the last 6 months, in fact probably 18 months, I've been tempted by people like Sam Holland to swap from my Canons to Lumix. In fact, what I'm going to do is get these out of the way at the moment, because at the moment I've only got the R3 over there and I need another camera over there to film on. So let's put this one over here. Right, we'll put this out of the way as well, shall we? Because I know what I'll be doing, I'll be playing around with it. So I do procrastinate about the smallest things in the world. So to divorce myself from Canon is going to be pretty hard for me to do.
It'll teach me to procrastinate.
And I made a video on it last year. It'll be up there somewhere if it's interesting to you. But what I can't do is I can't just switch over to another ecosystem and things like that, different menus and everything else, just by watching other people. And although their views are really, really appreciated and things like that, until you get it in your own hands, you're never going to know. Now, the thing that Panasonic do, like Canon do as well, is they do loan the kit to you. That's only up to 48 hours. And the thing with that, unless you're a full-time creator, you're not going to get enough use of it in 48 hours. It's a bit like going and test driving a car, driving it around the block, and then coming back and laying out 50 grand for one.
Buy a new car, oh la-di-da. Look who's got a new car.
Unless you've got more money than sense, you're not going to do that, are you? So what I've gone and done is bought the Lumix S5 Mark II myself, and then I'm going to put it up against the Canon R6 Mark II over the next 3 or 4 weeks, give it a good old test and see which one either I like using or actually gets the best results. And then what I'll do is I'll make another video showing all that sort of stuff and let you lot know whether or not I've decided to sell the Canon R6 Mark II to get another one of these Lumixes, or sold the Lumix and got another Canon R6 Mark II. The reason being is I want to have 2 cameras that are both have got the same setup, the same color profiles and things like that. Because even though I've got the Canon R3 on here and the R6 Mark II over there, they've still got slightly different color profiles in C-Log3, believe it or not. So when it comes to editing and color grading and things like that, although it's easy enough to match them up, it is a little bit more finicky. Plus, because I like playing around with gadgets and things like that, I want to find out what all the hype's about and whether or not it really is worth swapping. But what it's not going to be is a full scientific test, because I don't do those sort of things. If you want to do those, there's plenty of people out there that can do it. What I'm going to be doing is using it in testing in just normal hobbyist mode, or actually using it for doing some filming with some sports events or surf events and things like that, and see which one I get on better with and which one comes out on top. So first off, what's it feel like in the hand? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be carrying it around all day. You want to feel comfortable with it. I love my Canon. It feels so nice in the hand. But then again, I'm used to it, aren't I? And I'm sure I'll get used to the Lumix. And again, first off, first feelings, first impressions and that sort of thing, it does feel nice in your hand, the Lumix. However, the buttons are in different places, as you can see here. So that'll take a little bit of getting used to, won't it? But after all, they're not the same on the Canon R3, are they? So when I'm swapping between those two, I have to get used to them and things like that. But looking here at the Lumix, it does also have that nice retro feeling on it. I don't know what it is about it. It's something I can't put my finger on, but it does feel retro, and I do like a retro feeling. So on that note, it's a point each to both of them, because they both are pretty good in the hand. Next up, we're going to have the dynamic range, aren't we? Now, I don't know how to test all that sort of stuff, but according to the stats, the Canon R6 Mark II comes in at 10.8 stops, and the S5 Mark II comes in at 12.3 stops. Now, I've had no issues whatsoever with the R6 when it comes to color grading and get all of that detail in there and things like that. But if you want to know more about that and all the technical side and all the proper tests and all that sort of stuff, go and find other people like Gerald Undone or Sam Holland. They really know what they're talking about. And they've been able to prove that the S5, even though those stats show it anyway, they've proved that it does have better dynamic range, especially when it comes to filming outside and things like that. You get better detail in the clouds and all that sort of stuff. And some people have said to me when it comes to my footage on the Canon R6 that they already think that I've graded it. Just take a look at this footage here. Even though it's in C-Log3, next to the V-Log out of the Lumix, you can see that it's a lot flatter. and it definitely has more dynamic range when you grade it like this. So for me personally, because I film a lot outside, all of the sports events and surf rescue events and things like that, the dynamic range is going to be a thing. And also like getting that detail in the skies, because there's no point in having all the detail of all the people running or out on the surf and things like that and having all the sky blown out, is there? And I got a funny feeling, after playing around with this just for a few days, I'm going to really love Vlog. So unfortunately, Canon, that's 1 point to the Lumix. So let's talk about the elephant that's in the room and get it out on the table. And whoever thought of that saying? Because I can't get an elephant in here. And if I did, how the hell am I going to get it on this table? It'd bloody well break, wouldn't it? Autofocus. That is probably the main reason I've never ever thought of swapping away from Canon. Because like I said, when you're out shooting sports events, fast moving stuff, motorbikes, cars, and the surf rescue stuff and all of that lot, you want to rely on something that's going to nail it. But now that Lumix has that old phase detect autofocus on that, it might just change my mind when it comes to video. Now, my initial thoughts of the Lumix, just playing around with it for a few days alone, is it's pretty good, especially on the face and eye side of things. It tends to be really, really sticky. It works really well. But I have to say, the R6 still comes out a little bit better. And that's probably down to it having 4,897 focal points. Yeah, that's right, 4,897. Compared to the Lumix, which only has, and let me check this one, 779 focus points. Well, that's 4,000 more focal points. It's probably going to be a bit better, isn't it? Also, when it comes to the tracking mode, I haven't really got my head around how the Lumix one works. And I don't think it works quite as good, because with the Canon, what I tend to do is just press the button halfway down when I'm taking photos, and it will track that subject wherever it goes. It will go blue once I've locked on and things like that. I don't seem to be able to get that to work on the Lumix. However, if I'm missing something, please let me know in the comments down below. So, autofocus, even though the Lumix has come on a long way, yeah, it still has to be the Canon for that one. So that's a point to Canon and nothing to Lumix this time. Next is something I really do struggle with, and that comes down to white balance, especially in post when you're trying to match cameras up and things like that. And it affects everything, all the skin tones and things like that. Now for Canon, when it comes to photos, it's pretty easy. You just take one snap just like this, and then all you need to do is set it to the custom white balance. Now that's ace. But when it comes to video, when you switch over to the video mode on here, which again, I do like this little switch on the side here to go from photo to video, what you have to do is you have to switch it back to photo, take a photo for the custom white balance, then switch it back to video, and then you set it up just like this. Which, okay, it takes a few seconds, but it is a bit of a pain. But with the Lumix, all you need to do is hold up the white card just like this, and then press set. Simple. That's it. You're ready to rock and roll. So it has to be a point to Lumix for this one. Now, if you're like me, when you're out and about, you want to have different settings on your camera so you don't have to go in and fiddle around with, the frame rates and things like that. Especially if you want to go from normal to slow motion, it's really nice to have custom settings. The good news is that Canon listened to us with the R6, the original one, because on that one, you can set the custom settings in photo, but again, when you switched over to video, they didn't work. And now with a dedicated switch here, like I said earlier on, it goes from photo to video, and you can actually set up all the custom modes as well. And the same thing happens on the Lumix as well. You can set them up for photo and for video. So that's a point each this time. Next, we have the layout of all the buttons and everything else like that. Now, I'm definitely going to be a bit biased, aren't I? Because I've had Canons for, like I said, 30 years earlier on. I've had the Mark II, the R6 Mark II, and the Canon R3 since launch. So I'm going to be used to those. But I expect after about 3 or 4 weeks of playing around with the Lumix, I'm going to get used to that one as well. But my initial thoughts, really, when we're looking at these side by side here, I have to say that the Canon R6 Mark II wins, because it's got, like I said, this dedicated photo video switch over on here, and also a lovely feature that I love about both of these Canons now, both the R6 Mark II and the Canon R3. They've got a lock on there. So what happens is you set all your settings up, ready to go, don't you? And then by accident, you catch one of these things at the back and it knocks out your ISO or your shutter speed and things like that. And the lovely thing about the Canons is that you can set them all up and then switch this switch over here to lock, and then it's going to save you mucking it all up. But the Lumix itself has these extra buttons down here, as you can see, one for ISO, white balance and things like that. So I'm going to have to get used to those. And I know you'll all be saying in the comments down below, if don't be stupid, they're really good to do this. And yes, you can lock them and things like that. So if you can, and if you do know that, let me know in the comments down below. So how about when you're out and about filming and vlogging and things like that? Well, to be honest with you, when I'm out and about filming an event, yeah, or a sports event and things like that, I like to have big gear with me because one, it's easy to grab hold of and things like that. But two, also, it makes you look a little bit more professional, doesn't it? But seriously, when you're vlogging and things like that, to be honest with you, what I'm probably going to be using now is the Pocket 3 because this little gadget here is bloody awesome. And as the name suggests, it just fits in your pocket. But not everybody can afford to go and buy different gear and things like that for different events, can they? So when it comes down to that, I've got to say the Lumix is a lot lighter in your hand. So from that perspective, the Lumix is going to win, isn't it, from a vlogging side of things? Because not only is it lighter, it's also a lot less expensive. And if you were to drop it and things like that, it's not going to be such a big dent in your pocket as if you drop the Canon R6 with one of these lenses on it. And you know how expensive they are, don't you? So I think that's going to be a point down to Lumix. Now that leads me on to something that's probably going to get a few people's backs up. Pretty controversial, that is. Because on paper, stabilization, the Canon wins. Yep, I said it, the Canon wins. However, when you put it down to the test, then I'm sorry, Canon, yeah, it's something that you've got to really work on because the Lumix definitely wins this, hands down. But if you want buttery smooth footage, then you're going to use a gimbal anyway, aren't you? But handheld, then I'm really sorry, Canon. Yeah, Lumix is winning at the moment. Now, when it comes down to the video footage itself, and this is why I'm considering taking on the Lumix and things like that, you've got to have a look at the specs on it. Now, they both use 6K oversampled 4K. Now, I don't know what the technical bits on that, but basically what it means is it's 6K squeezed down to 4K, I think, and then that's where you get your footage from. However, when you go into 4K 60 FPS, the Canon does it in exactly the same crop. But for some reason, which does surprise me, the Lumix has an APS-C crop on it, and it crops in on the 4K 60. Now, you can compensate by that because all you need to do, if you want more in your frame, is move backwards, don't you? But I'm sure, and I really am sure, that Lumix, you must be able to do something with that, because one of the reasons I'm really considering the Lumix is not just because of the color of the footage, but also the fact that it does open gate. Now, again, Canon, you should be able to do that if they can do it. I mean, you got the technology and the size of the sensor and everything else like that. But the open gate is absolutely awesome because what it allows you to do is just film one set like this, and then you can actually use it on all of the different social medias. Whereas with Canon and things like that, what you're going to need to do is either rotate the camera around sideways, so you're going from portrait and landscape and things like that. But with the Lumix, it gives you that open gate stuff, so you can have it on a square, you can have it on portrait, you can have it on landscape. It doesn't really matter. And that's going to be a big time saver for a lot of people, isn't it? So Lumix, when it comes down to the video footage, I'm going to have to say, I think you win, even though you've crippled it with that cropped 4K 60 FPS. But if it's that important to you, then you're going to give a point to Canon, aren't you? So let's give them a point each for this one. Now then, low light, high ISO stuff. Yeah, that again is really important for me because when you're out and about doing an event and things like that, you can't always, control the light outside, can you? And also a lot of these events go on into the evening, so you're going to have to raise that ISO. So again, like I said, that's really important that you don't get all that grain and things like that. You can do with a little bit, but at the end of the day, you want to have some nice footage, especially if you're going to be doing the work for a client. Now, the S5 Mark II has dual ISO, one at 640 and the other at 4000. And although the Canon R3, that's over there, the Canon R6 Mark II, only says that it has an 800 native ISO, I've actually found that if you go up to 3200, you'll see, that it actually does clean it up a little bit. So it's sort of got a dual one. But to be honest, I think they're pretty much the same on there. And you can always get some video editing software from Topaz and things like that if you really want to get the noise down, can't you? Now, lenses. When it comes down to lenses, that could be another video on its own, couldn't it? But there's a few things to point out in there. RF lenses. All I can say really is wow. That's wow for its build quality. That's wow for the price of it because they're bloody expensive. And another wow because of the way they actually look. The quality of them, they look superb, don't they? And they bloody well work well. And they should do anyway at that price, shouldn't they? You just can't fault them. As for the Lumix ones, they're a little bit smaller and cost less. And they work bloody well. However, I have to say, putting the price to one side, then it's going to be Canon for me from the lens perspective, as in their native ones. There is an issue though. is the fact that they don't have any third-party ones yet. So if budget's a problem, then you're going to need to think about the Lumix one, aren't you? But like I said, for me personally, the Canon lenses win, so that's a point to them. And last but not least, it's going to be the operating system itself and where the buttons are and things like that. Now, I love the Canon menus. It's really easy to use, isn't it? But I have to say, and some people say this as well, is that it's very photocentric. Now, as we're considering this for video perspective, then that's probably where the Lumix is going to come into its own. Because after listening to lots of other people talking about the menus on here, definitely the Lumix is faced more towards a video perspective. But like I said, I'm going to have to get used to that menu. And let's look at the layout then. So there's the back layout. You can see the viewfinders here. Both got the flippy out screens. Let's look at the Canon one first. So on the Canon, you've got the joystick here. You've got the menu buttons. You've got the squirrely wheel, if that's what you call it. You've got the magnifying glass there, the quick menus, info, playback, and the delete button. On the Lumix, you get the same sort of things here. The screw down wheel, little joystick. Got these switches here, which I'm not sure what they're all for yet. You've also got the AF on and off, the playback, and a button there for switching between the screen and the viewfinder or combining both. So you have all the ports on the left-hand side. First off, we've got the Canon one here. Okay, with a microphone, headphone out, USB-C, and that terrible micro HDMI. The beauty of the Panasonic one is that you get the full HDMI, USB there, and then also the microphone switches up there. One thing worth pointing out though is when you put the flippy out screen out here, the microphone doesn't get in the way, whereas it's a pain in the rear with the Canon R6 because as you can see, it gets in the way of the screen. On the right hand side, okay, got two micro SD cards there for the Canon R6. And the same here with the Panasonic, two on there. Not going to go into great detail on all the buttons and dials and things like that, but there's a couple of things I'd like to point out which do set them both apart from each other. One thing I like about the Canon R6 is a dedicated photo and video switch. I really do like that. Also, they have not just an on and off, they also have a lock one on there so that when you've actually set all your settings up, you can click it into lock and it saves you catching these dials, doesn't it? The Lumix, now as far as I'm aware, they don't have the ability to lock it all off, which actually might be an issue because this wheel here on the side actually feels like you will catch it quite often. But hopefully Sam Holland's going to show me somewhere getting around that. I do like the fact that they've got the white balance, ISO, and buttons there separately. Again, all the buttons are customizable and so on and so forth. So which one am I going to keep for 2024? It's not that easy to decide, to be honest with you. I mean, what would you do? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. But what I'm going to do is not make a rush decision. I've only had this Lumix for a week or so now. I want to give it a good old test alongside the R6 Mark II. And, you know, time's precious at the moment. You know, the bad weather we got here in the UK. I want to get out and about with it and do some real good filming to put it to a good test before I make my mind up. But what I promise I'll do is in 3 or 4 weeks' time, I will have made my mind up and I'll make another short video on that to let you know which one for me personally, and it may suit you as well, which one I've actually gone for. So if you want to watch that one, then make sure you hit that old subscribe button and make sure you do the notification bell because otherwise you'll miss out on it. And in the meantime, if you've got any tests you want me to do or any questions you've got about these two, then put them in the comments as well and I'll try and do some videos around that as well to help you all out. Can't ask for more than that, can you? So if you found this one useful in any way, shape or form, do all that usual YouTube stuff. And if you're interested about the Canon R3 or when I first thought about the Lumix against the Canon R6, then these videos over here will be interesting to you. Thanks for watching everyone. Stay safe out there. And above all, have some fun and keep smiling. See ya.